welcome to the You're a Tourist podcast, where we get very serious and share a laugh or two about all the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of tourism that you may or may not have ever even thought about. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Dudley, and today we're going to be diving into kind of a new topic. With everybody working from home these days, why don't we work from home on vacation? Our guest today, joining me for this topic, is a lifelong cruiser who has spent 104 days of their life at sea. And when they're not planning their next adventure or exploring someplace new, they call Alabama home. So welcome to the show, Emily Banks.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. All right. Oh, we're going to dive so deep into this. This is something that I know kind of very little about, kind of a little bit jealous about it, and maybe I'll get some tips on how I can make it my life. Sorry, students. Sorry, students. Dr. Dudley's at sea. Okay, Emily. Before we get started with this, I like to play a little game with all of my guests that I call Tourists in the News. Okay?
Okay.
So it just kind of helps get us in the mindset of who we're talking about here. Tourists, they're crazy, they're quirky, right? They're crazy, they're quirky, they're unpredictable. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over 3 different headlines. I'm going to read you part of the headline and you're going to try and guess the part that is left out. With each one, you can ask me up to 3 qualifying questions or clarifying questions. I don't know what I say these rules as though like someone deemed them. It's like, I will not answer a question after the 3rd one. But anyway, hey, it works. Okay, here we go. So headline number 1, Karnataka police. So this is in India. Okay. Karnataka police punish waterfall bathing tourists by doing what?
In India.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like, the fill in the blank is like what their punishment was, I'm assuming.
Exactly.
And I'm assuming it's like something like they find them is too basic to be included in this headline. Like that seems fairly obvious that they were like probably fined and other things.
Yeah.
That just seems fairly obvious to me. Were they like banned from the park or whatever?
They weren't banned. No.
Because that just felt like the obvious answer of like, don't come back here, crazy people who are bathing in this waterfall.
Right. Yeah.
The ban was like the only thing that came to mind. I have no idea.
Okay. So the headline reads, Karnataka police punish waterfall bathing tourists by taking away their clothes.
That's incredible. Honestly,
yes.
That's exactly what those people deserve.
Thank you.
That is exactly what they deserve.
I know. That's
you
better than
games,
just...
You win stupid prizes. You
there
get what
you
get.
Go. Yeah. That's better than just being banned. Yeah. And that's what they actually... So the article says, or just a little bit about it, it says Karnataka police are taking the phrase modern problems require modern solutions to the next level by devising an innovative punishment for tourists who defied a ban on bathing in a waterfall during the monsoons.
Well, there you go, right there.
Yeah, they walked right past the sign. They took their clothes off. They got in the waterfall, and they're like, well, and now what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. How do you recover from that?
Right. Yeah, because obviously there was video, everything else. But they did return the clothing, though. Oh. So they just taught them a lesson. And you know what? I think maybe that might work a little bit more.
Honestly,
just kind of...
because then it's in the back of your mind the next time you go to do that, right? Of like, well, what if they take my clothes again and they don't give them back this next time?
Exactly. And even if it's not just the police, now it's like in your mind.
Yeah.
Of like, someone could take my clothes.
Yeah, some dude could just come by.
Exactly. Locals. Okay. Headline number 2. Here we go. I always like to put an animal one in here because people just don't know what to do around animals.
Yeah.
So headline number 2, tourists fined for approaching what in Norway? Crap, I've already answered one question. It's an animal. So tourists fined for approaching what in Norway?
In Norway, I will admit that the animal life in Norway is not a field of expertise for me. That's not something I casually study on a day-to-day basis.
Me
Um,
neither.
I'm just imagining it's got to be something absolutely just like why would you want to approach this in the first place? Because that's always what people do, right? Like they're not approaching like the tiny animals. They're approaching like a
No.
moose or a bison or something ridiculous. And so I'm imagining it's got to be some like massive
Right.
animal in Norway. Was it like an elk or something?
Ooh, that's a good guess. It's not an elk.
Because
Mm-mm.
that like would be the kind of animal that people would approach in this foreign country because people are just so dumb sometimes.
Yeah.
Um,
And I feel like elk and Norway go together.
yeah. Was it like some
Isn't
sort of
that like,
bear, maybe?
nope.
Bear
Not a,
or
we'll say not a land animal. I'll give
not
you
a land
that.
animal. Okay.
Now I'm making it even
Wow.
harder for you.
Yeah. But also now it's like, oh, we're adding like an extra layer of people being
Exactly.
dumb because they're also not on like solid ground, I would assume.
Right.
Um, are there sharks in Norway? Was it a shark?
Mm-mm. It was not. So, are you ready? I'll just,
I'm ready. Let's do it.
ready? It is a walrus. A walrus.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Right. I don't
Because
know
when I see
much.
a walrus, I don't think that's probably an animal I should stay away from. I'm just gonna
Right.
walk right up to it and see what happens.
Yeah, because I don't know a lot, and maybe if any of the listeners are like experts on this, but I feel like a walrus is just a really scary seal,
Yeah,
right?
that's
It's like
that's like my mental image. It's just a seal, but like scarier.
yeah,
Which to
like
me
an
would
old
be do
man
not
seal.
approach. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always terrifying too to approach like animals in the water because they always have the upper hand.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
and they're
do you
terrifying
they
because they
inevitably
weirdly,
they inevitably are better off than you are. You are on their territory, not the
yes.
other way around.
Yeah. And like walrus and seals, I feel like they can move alarmingly fast on land too, like faster than
Yeah.
we could imagine. Yeah. So it's
Like
like,
you leave the water,
what's,
it's coming after you. Like it's not
yeah.
like you get out of the water and then you've won. Like it can
Ex-
still come at you.
yeah, it's still going.
Yeah.
And you're trying to catch your breath. And it's like, I do this every day, buddy.
Yeah.
I just shoot out of the water onto the land and then keep going.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's a
oh,
daily activity for me.
yeah. Okay, so it says essentially what we would think it would say, that the person got too close, and there's an environmental act that stipulates that all traffic on the archipelago must take place in a way that does not lead to unnecessary disturbance of local wildlife, which include polar bears, seals, whales, reindeer, and Arctic foxes. I mean,
Yeah.
that's some big wildlife there.
Yeah. There's not a
And
single thing on that list that I'm like, that's a thing I want to approach in
no,
just casually. No, there's not a single
right.
thing on that list that I would be okay approaching just like out in the
In the
wild.
wild. Yeah. Of just like, yeah. And so it says, why did he do it? And it says the police prosecutor says he was after a good picture.
Of course he was,
Mm.
because that's all that
Here,
matters now is the cool picture for your Instagram feed and not about like
exactly.
not getting killed by a wild animal.
Now you've got like one arm for the rest of your life. And they'll be like,
Yeah,
well, it's for that really cool picture
yeah,
that I
yeah. But did
had.
you see that picture on my Instagram though? Like that was
Yeah.
great. It's like, okay, buddy, sure,
That really
sure.
changed my life for the better,
Mhm.
that picture. It gave me street cred. So we're starting to roll into cruises and stuff here with this. So it says, because of concerns over the impact of tourism and climate change, oh, these are big problems here with tourism. Because what's actually happening is climate change is letting us get, as things melt, it's letting us get closer to these areas that we couldn't ever get to.
Yeah.
The Norwegian government has announced tougher regulations coming into place next year that include a ban on getting within 150 meters of a walrus. And other measures include a cap on cruise ships. Ooh, we've all seen it, and we're going to dive into it later. Cap on cruise ships. Okay. Third and final headline, taking us just straight into cruises.
Perfect.
So here we go. And I even have a video for this one. But the headline is, large what breaks out on Carnival cruise ship?
Ooh. This is one of those things that I'm like, from being someone who's very active in this kind of space, I'm like, well, here's the list of 5 things that come to mind with this headline. I know this has happened a couple times actually, but is it like fight or a riot or whatever language this headline chose to use?
It's a fight.
Yeah.
A large fight breaks out on Carnival cruise ship. Maybe I made it too easy. But yeah, let's watch it here. Somebody so it says, whoever took the video, the 43-year-old happened upon the conflict when he was in search of a pizza around 3 a.m. on the final day of a Caribbean cruise in early June. He says, I woke up because I was starving. And then he saw the fight. So let's do this. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, I gotta share my screen here. Okay, share screen. Here we go. Let's do it.
World Star! World Star! Back up, my man. Back up. It's going down. Hey! Oh, shit! Welcome to the motherfucking cruise. No, not me, man. Hold on, shit. Oh! There it goes, shit!
Oh, no.
Goddamn! Welcome to the cruise. Holy shit! Come on, man. Hey, come on, man. God damn.
I haven't even watched that
through
the full thing. I know. I didn't realize that was 6 minutes long.
Oh, that's insane. Dude's just trying to get a pizza, man. Like, just let the man get a pizza and go back to bed.
Yeah. He's like, I just woke up, I was hungry, and then I walked into that. Like, come on.
Wild.
Yeah.
I just like
so
can't
that was
even
Carnival.
imagine just like trying to get a pizza and I walk into that of all things.
No. Okay, so that's it. That takes us into what we're going to be talking about today, because I didn't even really tease it up that much. So I know that I'm going to throw out a few things here, and then I'm going to let you fill in all of the gaps here.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So you work for a company that is just 100% online remote. So everybody there works remotely. So you decided that you're going to do it from a cruise ship, right?
Correct. That's basically exactly what happened.
Okay. So tell us the big key points here. Like, what cruise ship, if you're okay with that, what cruise line, and how long were you on this gosh darn, and did you ever get in a brawl like that?
Yeah. Well, I can confidently say that there were no brawls like that on my ship.
Ooh.
Which is nice to know. So I have been like cruising my entire life. It's how my family vacationed when I was growing up. I love being at sea. I think it's a really cool way to see a bunch of different places very easily. And so, I was in this fully remote job, and, especially post-pandemic, I have been trying to have take the trip and do the thing because we couldn't for so long. And it's like, I work fully remotely. I'll have an internet connection. I was able to get, these amazing deals because they were still kind of vamping up from the pandemic. And so I was getting all these deals and emails, and I was like, I wonder how long feasibly I could do this. Because, I booked one or two here and there, and then I I'm still looking, and I'm like, I think I could make this happen. And so I was at sea on the Carnival Celebration, which is an amazing ship. Could not recommend it more. For 50 days total, for basically a month and a half straight. And it was absolutely incredible. And I think that if every person in the world could do that, like that would be incredible. Um, because the
Uh,
internet was great, and I was able to like do my job during the day and then like go and do all of this other really cool stuff when I wasn't like sitting in front of a computer during the day.
yeah. So 50 days. So what are we in? We're in kind of the end of July. So that's like if we would have started on like June 1st or even like the middle of May.
Yeah. So it ended up
Think,
being from the 1st of October through like November 19th, I think was when I left the ship. So right at a month and a half, a little bit more.
okay. Okay. I was just trying to like really hone it in there for the listeners of like what this would look like, what
Yeah,
this would
it was
feel like.
over a full month and then right at 2 weeks basically in addition.
Okay. And was it just you or family or friends or anybody else with you?
Yeah, so I did it fully solo. I took
Ooh.
my first solo cruise in 2023, because it was one
Mm-hmm.
that I had rescheduled multiple times because of the pandemic. And so by the time it finally came
Mm.
up, the folks that I had originally planned to travel with like weren't able to. And I was like, I've been waiting on this cruise for years at this point because of the pandemic and
Yeah.
everything. I'm not letting like not having folks to go with me stop me. Um, and so I did that one solo, realized like, oh, this is great. I really like doing
Mm-hmm.
this solo actually, because there was no one else's schedule to coordinate with. It wasn't oh, someone wants to do this, so we need to go
Yeah.
do this. It was if I want to like do absolutely nothing today, I can do that. If I want to, if I go eat dinner at 6 and I'm like, I want to go back to the cabin and sleep for the rest of the night, like no one else's schedule matters with that. I can just go do it. And so I decided,
Yeah.
especially for this, if I was going to do it and be working and have to coordinate with all of that, I was like, I'm doing it by myself. I don't want to have to coordinate with other people while I'm also trying to do
Oh,
my
yeah.
job.
Yeah. So I take it then you had a room alone. I
Yes.
don't know how that works. I'm like that
Yeah.
it was like a college dorm and you're like, "Oh, they gave me another solo cruiser."
Yeah, it was really great to be kind of fully alone because, the interior rooms on these ships, which is what I did because it was the cheapest and I don't spend a ton of room time in my room like anyway. And so it's like I
Mhm.
just need like a room with plugins and a desk and a bed and like I'm happy. Like we're good. But being by myself, it meant that like I had 2 closets worth of closet space and like didn't have to worry about sharing the
Ah.
shower, that anything with other people, and got to, push the beds together. So instead of them being basically like twin beds, it became like a queen
Mhm.
size bed that I had by myself, and it was really nice. And so I definitely think going solo, it helped me be able to not, want to bump up to a bigger room because I'm not sharing it with anybody. Like
Mm.
it's just me and I'm fine with whatever space I have. At that point, I was just happy to be on a cruise ship for 50 days. Details like what the room looked like
Right.
did not matter to me whatsoever. It's like,
Did you
whatever.
yeah. It's like the part that's blowing my mind right now a little bit is the Wi-Fi of
Yeah.
like
So that
yeah.
was one of the things that like I really kind of had to figure out is, is the Wi-Fi gonna make this possible? And so I took basically like a tester cruise in August,
Oh, okay.
where I like warned everybody, hey, like I'm not putting in for PTO for this, but like if I get on the ship and it has no Wi-Fi, like I'm out this week basically. And
Gotcha.
all of I think maybe all of Carnival's fleet now. At that point, it was just the newer ship. Had upgraded to like the Skynet or Skylink or whatever the like Tesla Elon Musk internet is. Elon Musk is awful, but his
Gotcha.
internet was great, so I take what I can get. And so the internet was like fantastic. Was able to do video calls and all of that kind of stuff. Totally fine. The only time that we ever really had internet issues was there was a couple of days where we were kind of going around a tropical storm system. And so the
Mm.
like waves were really rocky, but I kind of treated that as if I was at home and there was a really bad storm, I also wouldn't have internet. Like that's not a cruise specific thing. That is just part of being in a
The-
working remote environment, in that like I am subject to the weather and I am subject to my internet connection, and being at home versus being at sea is not a difference that would have made. Bad weather's bad weather. But really
That's
outside
true.
of, for about 48 hours there, I was like, yeah, no, I can't get anything done. Like this is not working. Everything was fine the entire time.
Oh, that's nice with
Yeah.
that. Because I just remembered you said that you're in Alabama, and I'm like,
Yeah.
my parents live in like a rural area in Southern Illinois, and like I could never work from home for their house. Like their
Yeah.
internet sucks so bad.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it may.
Yeah. Like I'm in rural Alabama, so like my internet connection is not great at home.
Yeah.
Much, I mean, if anything, my internet connection was better while I was gone because I had nice, reliable, strong internet. Versus at home, like the wind blows funny and I lose internet connection. So I think it's just
Right.
all about like the openness and acknowledgement that like everywhere has some kind of internet issue that could happen. And if like that's the one thing that's like holding you back from traveling and working remotely, like ultimately that's like kind of a crappy reason for that to be the thing that holds you back from it.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're looking for an excuse.
Right, exactly. Like if
Like,
that's the thing holding you back, like be creative, come up with something a little better.
exactly. Yeah. That's what it was like. My husband he used to be able to fly for free because his mom worked for the airlines. And it would always be like, everybody'd always be like, oh, I just wish I could do that. It'd just be so great. And he'd be like, here's a ticket. Let's go this weekend. And they're, oh, well, I can't do it this weekend. I can't. And so it's like, oh, well, you really don't want to do that then. You just
Yeah.
want. Well, speaking of that, though, did you meet anybody who was doing a similar thing to you on the ship?
So not like to the extent that I did. 50 days is a lot in a row to be at sea.
Yeah.
But they would
Yeah.
always have, like when we kind of came into port in Miami, which is where the ship was based out of, you like have to like meet in a room so that you can go through customs, so that the U.S. government knows that if like
Mm,
Carnival says they're bringing 5,000 people back into the States, that like they physically see 5,000 people, which like makes total
that makes
sense, not a
sense.
big deal. But we would all kind of meet in this room, and you'd end up seeing the same people week after week. We'd be like, oh, you were on like 2 weeks ago too. This is your second back to back or your third or whatever it may be. Um,
Oh,
and so you definitely kind of end up seeing the same people a lot, which is really funny. Because like the ship that I was
yeah.
on at the time was Carnival's biggest ship. It still is like up there. The thing holds a little bit over 5,000 guests plus another 2,000 crew.
Wow.
I mean, it's like a city
Yeah.
on a ship. And so you would think like I'm
Yeah.
gonna see this person one time and like not see them again like the rest of the week. Like
Mm-hmm.
logically that doesn't make sense, but you'd end up seeing the same people over and over and over again. And so, as we're kind of sitting there talking, people, would ask, well, like, how long have you been here? Da 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 da. And I would always mention, like, yeah, I'm here for 50 days. This is week like 6 or whatever it may be. And so you'd see people
Mm-hmm.
later on in the week and they'd be like, how is this week going? Like, is there anything new that you've been able to do this week? Like, what are your recommendations? And so there's always inevitably
Yeah.
like a solid group of people that are doing at least one back to back where they were on the week before and do the next week too. And it's fun being able to find those people kind of around the ship and figure out, well, what did you not get to last week that you're like really excited to do this week or anything like that? Because it's
Yeah.
impossible to do everything on the bigger ships in a week. I mean, I was there for 50 days and I still feel like I didn't do everything. So like
Oh,
it's
that's what I
always
was gonna
fun to
say.
hear
Yeah.
like what did you do last week? Like what are things that are messes while you're here? Because I did have that flexibility, which became really nice because if there was a show that I really wanted to see at the same time as a comedy that I really wanted to see,
Mm.
or they're having some kind of deck party, but there's also this show that I want to see or this musician that I really like, I always have the mindset of
Yeah.
like, well, I can just do the other thing next week. Because most of the
Right.
entertainment schedule doesn't really change. Like it's pretty solid because for most people, it is their 1 week on the ship and they aren't expecting to be able to see all this other stuff. So for me, I was like,
Right.
well, there's this thing that I really want to go to, so I'll do the other thing next week and it'll be totally fine. Which was able to open up a lot of flexibility for stuff that was one of the nice perks that I didn't necessarily anticipate going into it, which was really nice.
Yeah, I could see that too, where it's like, we talk a lot about in tourism, like in my classes and stuff, it's this idea of liminality, right? And so this is kind of what you're flirting with going around,
Yeah.
because when we say liminality, yeah, it means that you're not at home, you're not at work, you're not, you're just kind of floating out there.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how we talk about and predict and we find the reason for the fact of why sometimes tourists act so crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't have to be the person I am at home. I don't have to be the father, the pastor, the whoever.
Yeah.
And then it's like, places like Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? That's their whole tagline is on
Yeah.
that. But you're not like that because you are at work. And so
Yeah.
there's like, so did you find that like you were kind of in a different mentality that you kind of didn't really feel? You just lived in a cool place? Like,
Yeah,
how did your brain work around that?
yeah, that's basically what kind of it came to as I kind of got settled, is it was very much, it became less of, oh, I'm working while I'm on vacation. And it very much turned into, I'm still working, I'm still doing my job. I just happen to be able to like look out at sea while I'm on this video call today, or I happen to be able to take this like call while I'm having lunch, in San Juan, Puerto Rico, or all this different other stuff. And so it became like I
Yeah.
very quickly fell into just like a natural routine of like I woke up every morning, I went and got the same coffee at the coffee place on board. I had like 2 or 3 places that I like naturally gravitated to go work, depending on if we were in port or at sea, because obviously on port days there are less people on the ship, so you can kind of get out a little bit more and still be able to do video calls and all that kind of stuff. So I'd like find where I wanted to work, and then I would work for a couple hours, and lunch would come, and I would either, eat lunch on board, or I would normally kind of spend my lunch hour like out in port. If we were in port, it's like hey, like I'm going to step away from an hour. You won't be able to contact me because, if I'm in Mexico, obviously, like I don't necessarily have phone signal or anything like that. Like fully unreachable for the next hour.
Yeah.
I'll be back. Go out, explore port, come back, do the afternoon block of work. And then once I got off work, it then became we're like, what of the 4 or 5 restaurants on board am I going to have for dinner tonight? What show am I going to go see? Am I going to do comedy? Am I going to do a musician? And I'm going to see a stage show. Like, what is kind of the night going to take? But for the majority of the workday, I just naturally fell into basically a very similar pace that I have, when I work from here. I wake up in the morning, go get something to drink. I come to my desk. I work for a couple hours. I step away for lunch. I do what I need to do. I come back. I put in the next half of work, and then when I finish my workday, I step away and I go do other stuff. It became a very similar routine, just with a much cooler thing to look at than my wall in front of me. I was like, well, I can go look out at like the actual ocean or an island or something of that. It was definitely a better view than the one I have right now.
Yeah. So I think that's it. It would be hard for someone who's not good at, which I guess working from home anyway would be hard for someone who's not good at like self-structuring. Like, if I'm not accountable to anyone, then, because I could see where some people it might be hard to let the work be, if I'm working remotely and like just have a vacation for 51 days. I think those people might give it a bad rap.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like you have to like really know yourself as a person to know if you can kind of settle into it. But I also think it's one of those things that after kind of the first 2-ish weeks, the like, oh, this is really cool kind of wears off. Because at the beginning, like it was really hard to find that routine, because I was like, oh, there's just so much stuff that I can go do. And like, if I wasn't working, I could be doing this or I could be doing that. And then after the first couple of weeks, I was like, like, yeah, sure, I could be doing those other things. But like, if I can sit down and knock this out and like be done with work, then when my workday ends, I can step away and I can go do all the things that I want. And so once that kind of new, oh my God, this is so exciting, this is the coolest thing I've ever done kind of feeling wore off, it was very much like, okay, like let's find a routine now and let's just do this.
Yeah. Because I think that's it. Especially in the US, our vacations are so short that we've kind of trained ourselves of like, we've got to do everything every single day. We've got to pack our days full so that we don't miss anything. So I could see where like the first couple weeks you had to retrain yourself.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very kind of American thing, like the statement of you get back and I need a vacation from my vacation. kind of mindset of
Mm-hmm.
like, you want to do all of these things. And, in the US, we have a very like limited number of vacation days that we can take. And so you take a week off and you like
Mm-hmm.
jam pack action. We're doing things from the time the sun goes up until the time we collapse in bed. We're like seeing all the things and going all the
Yeah.
places. And then you get like back home and you're like, I need to sleep for 4 days before I could like be a productive
Right.
member of society. And this kind of took that away because I was still able to do all these cool things and do all of this and do all that and do everything I wanted to experience. But was just
Yeah.
like the natural kind of falling into, okay, like I can still do all these things, but like ultimately I have a job to do. I'm getting a paycheck. Like let's lock down and
Right.
let's do this. That doesn't normally happen when folks are on vacation because I agree that especially in the US we have this mindset of like, if I'm not doing something every single second of my vacation, then like what's the point of having a vacation? Like to not do things
Exactly.
all the time. That's like the entire
Yeah.
goal is to not do things, but here we are.
Yeah, to rest and relax. Yeah. Do you think that when you came back, so it was this past November so
Yes.
like 2023 November.
Right.
So, when you came back, do you feel like you were just kind of, I don't know, like, like you just felt good. You weren't like waiting for the next vacation. Like you were just like, I've done it. Like it's almost like, is it a feeling of, sometimes people feel trapped at work of just like, I've got this thing on my back and now it's like, but like,
Yeah.
how'd you feel when you got
Yeah.
back?
Yeah, when I first got back, there was definitely that feeling of like, it is so good to be home. Like, I jokingly said at the time that for the time being, I was enjoying being on ground that did not rock under me. That was a nice
Oh,
feeling because
we'll get
that
into
definitely took
that.
a like little bit to kind of get used to again. But then after,
Yeah.
being home for a couple weeks, I am one of those people that constantly has to have like some in the process of planning a trip, whether it be like booking things or just
Gotcha.
like making a list of places that I want to go. Like that's just naturally how I am. And so really it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of I came home the week of like Thanksgiving. So that was like a good time to settle in because it was like a partial work week and I was like able to kind of really get everything together. And then
Yeah.
by about Christmas, I was like, okay, like let's what's next? Like let's start planning something. Let's go do something. But yeah, there definitely
Yeah.
was for that first little bit of like very much happy to just be like in a settled place and be able to like just like sit for a minute and enjoy being at home. After
Yeah.
when you're away for 50 days like that's 50 days of really not being able to call my family super often or like be able to see
Oh,
things,
yeah.
which is a part of it that, I didn't anticipate. Like by the time I got home, I was like, I just want to like be around people and faces that I recognize for a little bit because I hadn't had that
Yeah.
while I was gone. Which again is one of those things that when I was planning all of this, I didn't anticipate being something that I'd be excited to be back for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Makes you appreciate what you have back
Absolutely.
home. Yeah.
Exactly. That like
Yeah.
sense of appreciation like is so much more now because I know what it's like to take that step back and like be away from everything. It's like I had a new appreciation of just like being at home and not wanting to like be
Yeah.
immediately going all these places.
Yeah. Well, that's right. When you said about being on land, it's just like, just ballpark it. So you say it was like 50 something, some odd
Yeah.
days. How many of those days do you say that you were walking on land? I mean, you were essentially a pirate at this point.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
like you
basically
were
what it
living
is.
on the seas.
Yeah. So for the most part, because you cruise ships kind of break it down as weeks. So week to week,
Mm,
you'll have 4 days at sea and then 3 days in a port. And
okay.
so in order to try to prevent the like, oh my gosh, when was the last time that I stood on real land, really made a priority of
Yeah.
every time that we were in port, even if I got off the ship for 20 minutes, taking that time to like just go be on land. But there was still definitely that feeling when I
Gotcha.
got home of like getting used to the fact because your body naturally starts to compensate for it. I mean, just
Yeah.
it happens even when I've gone on like short week trips. Like my body naturally starts to compensate for the rock of the ship. And so being home, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like there was definitely those first couple of days that I was like, I'm walking really strangely. And probably no one else, like when other people were watching me, like probably no one else noticed that I was doing it. But in my head, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm walking in a very weird way. And I was like, it's because my body has learned to like naturally rock with the ship so that you're not doing this number the whole time and snaking back and forth, because that's what you do if you weren't
Right.
compensating for it. But I was like, I'm walking really weirdly. I like need to figure this out. And it took probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks to
Oh,
fully feel
really?
like I was walking stably again, just because of how much my body
How
had naturally
funny.
adjusted to it.
Yeah, because it's like I've been seasick like once, and it wasn't a cruise ship. It was a smaller boat, which is probably why I got seasick.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like the main thing that I remember. For like hours after I got on land, my body just kind of felt like it was going like this, and I couldn't make it stop.
Yeah, like you're
And you,
very conscious of the fact that you're doing it. Like you know it's happening, but you also physically can't stop. Like it's just like
yeah.
this is how I walk now, I guess. I don't know what else to do. Other than like hope eventually I stop doing it. That's basically what happened. That I hoped eventually I'd stop, and
Yeah.
then eventually I stopped.
Oh man. Okay. So we also or you brought up seeing new faces and stuff like that. So I mean, that's something. I mean, you were. I'm sure lovely people are on cruises
Yeah.
all the time. But like what we've already talked about, there are also people on vacation, and
Yep.
that is who you were surrounded by
Yeah.
every day, all day. How was that?
Yeah. I
Did
mean,
you ever just like
you
close
definitely
your door and be like, not today?
yeah.
I
Yeah,
can't take you.
yeah, there were definitely times that I was like, I need to not be around these people for like a minute. Like, y'all are just like being too much. Because you think about the weeks that I was gone, one of those weeks was Halloween. And people like
Oh
at
no.
home forget how to function the week of Halloween. And then you
Exactly.
imagine those people on a cruise ship in which, if you get the drinking package, you can drink 15 alcoholic beverages a day.
Oh
And it
no.
made
Is that
that
really
was
it? 15?
yeah, 15 a day. And like people,
Oh,
there are people that hit it every single day, like for
sure.
7 days straight. They're drinking
My
15
God.
alcoholic beverages. And when you think about the days that you're in port, like you've got people who are drinking and then go out in port and get more alcohol and then come back and
Oh my
continue to drink. And it's like, and that's when things like brawls happen. That's when people lose their
Yeah.
mind, because that's what happens when you have a large group of people that, especially if you're in a big group, are like probably tired of each other by about day 5. And then you
Mm-hmm.
add alcohol to that mix, and that's like not always a great combination. Because you'll notice in a lot of
No.
these like fight videos that you'll find online of cruise ships, 95% of them happen, we'll say, like the last day of the cruise or day 6 of the cruise. It's
Mm.
never like these people aren't fighting like this on day 2 when everyone is still like excited to be on vacation, happy to be around each other. It's always day 6 or 7 when everyone's like, I want to be home and I'm tired of these people and I never want to talk to them again. That like is always how it goes,
Exhaust.
which like is very fair. You know,
Yeah.
if you're in a big group of people that you're not used to being around, like I get tired of people that I care about a whole lot after about 6 or 7 days. Like I understand
Yeah.
why it's happening. But yeah, there are definitely, I think that there are two extremes. You either see like the best of people because they acknowledge that they're on
Mm.
vacation. They acknowledge that if they're on a ship, there are people doing their job that they get paid to do. They acknowledge when they're out in
Mm-hmm.
port that these are just people who like live here. Or you have the quite literal
Mm.
exact opposite of that, of people who get very entitled and think I'm on vacation.
Mm.
And so what happens with me is the most important thing on this ship, and everyone else is whatever, and it's me and only me, and the other
Yeah.
4,900 guests on the ship or whatever. And so I think
Right.
it's very much, people need to acknowledge, I think just as a general rule in tourism, whether it be like on a ship or on land or whatever it may be, like you are not the only person on vacation, especially on a
Yes.
cruise ship in which, you know, there's sometimes you go places and like this may be a vacation that you've planned your entire life. And like I understand that you want it to be amazing and incredible, but there are also,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you go abroad or to a different state or to a national park, like there are folks that are there casually. I mean, that, you know, I live within a couple hours of Great Smoky Mountain National Park. We used to go all the time when I was
Mm.
younger. I have family that lives up there that will like go to the park after work on an afternoon because they can, because it's right there. And so you have like a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
ranges of people. When you're on a cruise ship, outside of the crew, every single person around you is on vacation. And if you think that you are like the person on the ship, that it's my vacation and no one else matters, it's like, yeah, literally everyone else is too. Like, I don't know
Right.
what the disconnect is. If you are on vacation, so are the other people. And so that's always been
Right.
like the thing that gets me is like the really, really entitled people that I'm like, y'all, everyone else is on vacation too. Like, most people are not
Right.
doing this 50 days on a boat thing. Like, I am not the rule. I am
Exactly.
very, very much the exception. So, like, let other
Yeah.
people have fun too. It is not all about you. And ultimately, the people on the cruise ship, like the crew, are great people. I've met amazing crew members that I consider friends. They're really, really cool
Mm.
people. They come from all over the world. Like, ultimately, they're there to get a paycheck. And, like, that's okay.
Right.
Like, ultimately, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, they're very cool people. I consider a lot of them my friends, but, like, they're there to get a check. And so to
Mm-hmm.
make their lives obnoxious is just like, it's the same kind of people that, like,
Yeah.
go to the store in town and, like, yell at the cashier for no reason other than because they
Right.
can. It's like, it's not, that's not how this works. That's
Yeah.
not how it's supposed to go.
No, exactly. And that's what, yeah, it's some of the stories that you hear from working on cruise ships and stuff. It's just like, I can't,
Awful.
because I mean, and like you say, stories that we hear from anywhere of kind of just tourists being entitled and stuff. And then it's like you put the added thing of on a cruise ship, people are smiling and laughing with you while they're
Yeah.
at work. So you're like, oh, they're not actually. And it's just like, no, that's
Yeah.
part of the job. It's part
Yeah,
of the uniform.
it's that mindset of they recognize that most people here are on vacation and they not only want to, but also quite literally get paid to make sure that you have the vacation of a lifetime while you're on the ship. Like, that is what they get paid to do. Sure,
Right.
they're bartenders or they're stewards or they're entertainment staff or whatever, but like at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, their job is to make sure that you have like the time of your life this week. And so yes, they like are smiling and laughing with you and having a good time, but at the end of the day, that's because they're getting paid to do it. Just because they're smiling and
Right.
laughing it with you like does not mean that they necessarily like enjoy your company. It means that you're in front of them and they're hopeful that you're going to like tip them and help them like not hate their jobs this week is what it all comes down to.
Exactly. Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. If you made friends, I mean, essentially, you had to have seen the same people. So yeah, you made
Yeah.
friends with the crew, and or at least talked to them, and
Yeah, I
yeah.
think it very much they start to pick up when people have been there for a little bit. Because naturally, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I do the same thing when I'm at home. Like I start to gravitate to, oh, like this is, I really like going and seeing live comedy when I'm on ships because live comedy isn't something that I
Mm.
have close to me. And so that's something that I can do
Oh
that's
yeah,
very
yeah.
different for me. And so I go to live comedy a lot, or
Mm-hmm.
I end up kind of going back to the same restaurants because it's food that I really like, or I end up back at, this particular bar because I really like the staff. And so they naturally start to pick up
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this person's like been here a while. They naturally kind of take note of that. And so I like very naturally, just because it was people that I was around a lot, like any kind of friendship start, is you start to make friends with those people and you start to talk to them. And, they
Yeah.
ask questions and like want to know why, like, how are you here for so long? What are you doing? Like, what have you done?
Right.
And so, I mean, there are some of them that like I'm still in contact with that I'm like, because they normally, their contracts are anywhere from 6 to 12 months straight where they're on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
And then they may have like a 3 to 6 month break and then they're back on a ship. And so they're not always coming back to the same ship
Yeah.
every single time. So there are folks that I've kept up with that I'm like, hey, the
Oh.
next ship assignment that you get, like, I'd love to know where you're headed so that if I happen to be planning something at the same time, like maybe we can overlap and like be on a ship together again. And that's
Oh,
one of those things that's
nice.
really
Yeah.
cool because so many of these crew members are not from the States. I mean, the vast majority of them are from other
Mm-hmm.
countries. And it's like very cool to say, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's my friend Fry. He's like from Zimbabwe. And we met on a cruise ship because he was
Mm.
crew. And those are the kind of
Yeah.
relationships that, like, if I hadn't done this, I may not have necessarily been able to build, that I think is one of the really cool things about doing
Right.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly like what you say of like, and see them as people,
Yeah.
not crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Not
they are
just like, oh,
they are real humans who like have real
yeah.
interests and like have families at home, and so many of them are sending the majority of their paycheck back to a wife and back to kids. And I like loved there was because of the time that I was there, like there is
Mhm.
constantly part of the crew changing every single week, because they
Mm.
never want to get into a situation where like it is contract change for 90% of the ship, because like that's a bad thing and bad
Oh
things
yeah.
happen when that happens. So there's always, 150, 200 of them rotating like every single week. And you'd start to really get
Mhm.
to know them as people, because I would consciously ask questions, like want to know about them, that, it would get to the end of their contract and I would say like, have an amazing time off. Like enjoy spending time with your wife and kids. Are you going home? Are you staying in the States? Like what's your plan for this time off? And so that's one of those things
Yeah.
that most people don't get to experience, because they don't see them
Mhm.
as actual humans. They see them as
Right.
crew whose only job is to make sure they have a good vacation. It's like, yes, that is their job, but like,
Yeah.
that's also a guy with a wife and kids who's like excited to go home next week.
Right. Yeah, cuz yeah, the contracts like you talk about are like this is just something for and correct me if you've learned different from them, but for the listeners, the way that kind of cruise ships work, which is sometimes they get a little bit of heat for this, is a cruise ship can fly under whatever flag they want to fly under. So many of the and so whatever flag they fly under, those are the rules and regulations they have to work under. So that's why so few cruise ships, if last I was kind of diving into this, there were no cruise ships that flew under the US flag,
Right.
because the business model of a cruise can't afford to pay to follow the labor regulations of the US.
Yeah, I mean, if you
So it's a lot of
consider
these. Yeah.
every ship having, between 1,000 and 2,000 crew members on average, even if
Yeah.
every single crew member's at minimum wage, I mean, you're going to sink a company immediately. I mean, it's just not one of those things that is feasible for most folks,
Yeah.
especially when you consider that you've got, your captains and your like high ranking folks that are making well
Mhm.
above minimum wage. They're making plenty of money. They're just fine. And so, yeah, I think as
Yeah.
far as I'm aware, there isn't a single active ship that flies under a US flag, and you'll see most of them flying, Jamaica or the Bahamas or Bimini,
Bahamas.
or
Yeah.
ones where their minimum wage is much lower. And I definitely think, when you talk about like the ethics of all of this, like that definitely is something like personally kind of gets to me, because I know that these folks are doing really difficult work a lot of the time and not making near as much money as they should for it.
Right.
But I also have to consider, and I've talked to, some of the crew about this, and they say,
Mhm.
ultimately, even though this is, I am making very little money when you look at the States, when you look at the fact that the vast
Mhm.
majority of them are for countries in Asia and Africa where like there may not be a minimum wage, like, period, or the minimum wage is next to
Mhm.
nothing. They're like, this is still a considerable amount of money for me to be able to send home to my family. And I also
Right.
operate under the fact that these folks are away from home for 6 months to a year at a time. I mean, some of them with
Yeah.
little to no actual contact with their family. And for someone to be
Mm.
willing to step away and do that, clearly, like they have to be making money that they're happy with, because no one's doing that
Right.
if they aren't making enough money to be able to support themselves and their family. Because, like, it's a
Right.
difficult job. It's a difficult mindset to be in. And if they're willing to step away from
Yeah.
that, I don't want to have ships and have companies move into the states that would then require those people to lose their jobs altogether. And I think that's a trade-off that we
That's
really have to acknowledge when we're thinking about the ethical side of all of this.
mhm. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, you're right. And and that's where it's like, we've got bigger structural issues and stuff like that. Yeah. That's creating this,
Yeah.
and things. Yeah. So it's just for the listeners. Yeah. It's just, so when they are at 6 months and when, the contracts and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, give them a break, give them a break too, because
Yeah.
many of them are working every single day or at least 6 days a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, the vast majority
yeah.
of them, if anything, are getting, a couple hours off every day rather than a full day off. And if they are, it's a single day every week
Hmm.
for a year straight, a year plus straight. And like I said, for a lot of these folks, they're
Yeah.
going that long without speaking to anyone they know. A lot of them are
Mm-hmm.
communicating in a language that is not their first language, because the vast majority are from countries
Mm-hmm.
that don't speak native English. And they just like that deserves to be acknowledged. The fact that like they are away
Right.
from their families, speaking a language that isn't their native language, making very little money ultimately when you compare it to the US, to like make sure
Mm-hmm.
that you have a good time while you're on vacation.
Right.
And for you to then turn around and be like, that's really cool or whatever, but like my food took 5 minutes longer than I wanted it to.
Exactly.
Like, sorry, you're being an asshole. Stop it.
Right. Yeah, it's like the people who do that, and we talk about this all the time with like waiting tables. Like the worst restaurant people are the ones who've never waited tables. And so
Hmm.
it's like if you say that dealing with tourists day in and day out of like the emotional labor that is to act like you're having a good time when you're dealing with tourists all day and to try and say that's not a skilled job,
Yeah.
it's like, well, then you try
Yeah, yeah.
it.
Literally go put on a uniform and do a single shift and tell me how you feel after that. Because I promise you, your attitude will be
Yeah.
vastly different.
Exactly. Yeah. Whew. Um, so what I was when we were going back real quick, like to the tourists, there was one other question I was going to ask about that. So, do you see? So you were there long enough. So it's like, were there any types of kind of groups? And this could actually launch us into our tips as we go forward. But it's like, were there any types of groups? And when I say groups, I mean like bachelorette parties or like honeymoon or family reunion, whatever. Was it any, or like you're all dressed in a matching Hawaiian shirt or something? Is it any groups that you started to see that you were just like, oh god, like here, like to where you could just kind of predict how it was going to play out?
Yeah, the family reunion groups are always a time. And it is because most of the family reunion groups that are on cruises are bringing like 50 people. And I like,
Oh
first of
no.
all, I'm like, I don't like 50 people, period, much less 50 people that I'm willing to sign up to
Right.
spend a week with, just like personally.
Yeah.
But it's always like these massive groups of people. They all, like, every single day, they have their little matching shirt that all says, like, that it's their family reunion. And the problem with that is those people don't want to acknowledge the fact that seating 50 people at dinner takes a long time. Like they don't
Oh,
just have 50
yeah.
seats worth of like tables to just immediately take you when you say, I want to go eat dinner now. Because what they've started to do, especially post
Oh.
COVID, is where like you can go into the app on Carnival and say, like, I want to eat now.
Mhm.
And it'll, normally there's like a 5-10 minute wait and it'll get you to their seat to try to prevent the like massive buildup of all a bunch of people in one very close area to try to help prevent the spread of like
Gotcha.
any kind of COVID, flu, disease type things. And those people
Mhm.
like will see, because I'm always like, I'm one of those people, I want to eat early because I have like other things that I'm excited to go do. Like, give me my food, let me go do other
Mhm.
things. So I was always like checking in the second it opened, because I was a solo cruiser and it was easy to seat me, like normally immediately getting a table. Like I would go ahead and
Oh,
check in and
yeah.
immediately go up to the restaurant because I knew it wasn't going to take very long. And you'd have these people getting
Mhm.
so mad at like the hostess because they're like, all of
Mhm.
these people like got here after me and they're getting to seat blah 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 blah. And I'm like, there's 50 of you. It is much easier to seat me, a single human, than it is to seat 50 of you. And yet
50.
every
Yeah.
single time, every week, there would be some family reunion group that like couldn't get that to click through their heads. Or
Uh,
like if you're going to a show in a theater that holds 250 people on a ship that
mhm.
sails 5,000, y'all like probably aren't going to be able to sit together. I'm really sorry. But
Right.
like y'all aren't going to be able to sit and do the show together. I hate that for you. But if you're not right there when the doors open, like you can't stroll in with 50 people 5 minutes before a show starts and expect, one,
No.
that all of you are even gonna like fit, and secondly that you're all gonna be able to find seats together. And I was always, especially with the mindset of like, I'm here for a long time, like if me swapping a seat
Mhm.
down so that y'all can sit together can make that happen, like I'm always happy to do that. I like put into the world
Mhm.
what you want to get out of it. But people are also entitled to tell you no that they don't want to move because it's their vacation too.
Right.
And you don't get to be mad
Absolutely.
at them for that. It's like the whole thing with like planes and
Yeah.
like, oh, are you willing to swap seats with me so I can sit with my partner or whatever? It's like,
Yeah.
if that person wants to tell you no, they're perfectly entitled to do that. And if you get mad about it,
Right.
that's like, perhaps you should have like done something to ensure that you and your partner could sit together. Get there early,
Exactly.
find your seats, send people in to like save them because like cruise people are very much like we are very aware of this like saved seat rule. Like if someone says, "Oh, I'm saving the seat for someone," like we're very accepting of that. Of like, "Okay, cool, like no problem," because
Okay.
we understand like somebody your partner may be going and getting 2 drinks for you at the bar. They may have run to the restroom and the restroom is a deck
Gotcha.
down or something. We're very like, "Cool, that's fine." And so send people to go do that so that you're not all walking in 5 minutes before and going, okay, well, like there's 10 seats here and there's 10
Yeah.
seats here and they're here and here. So if we like ask people to move, eventually we'll be able to get all these seats together. It's like, come in and sit down.
Oh
Just
my.
like if you wanted to be there,
Right.
get there on time. Like it's I've always posted like show starts at 7:30, doors open at 7. Be there at 7
Yeah.
and you'll get the seats that you
Oh
want.
god.
It's not that
Yeah.
difficult. I can solve the problems that you're
No.
having. You're just being really frustrating about it. But yeah,
Right.
that's really the only
And like
group that I'm
what's
like family reunion folks, man, because it's always massive groups of people.
I could imagine. And it's like, and here's my thing with groups that size, or really even just like groups that are 10 or more. It's just like, can you really just not spend 30 minutes away from each other? Like maybe that's a good thing. Then you
Yeah,
all have something to talk about afterward because you all had a different experience.
yeah,
But just like,
especially
why? That's my
like
nightmare.
yeah, why? Especially like folks that are upset that they all like can't sit together during a show. I'm like, it's a show. You're coming in and sitting down and for the love of God being quiet. So like, why does it
Right.
matter if you're not all sitting together? And that was one of the things that I loved about like my family cruises a lot. All 4 of us plus my aunt, so that's 5. During the day, we would all
Mm-hmm.
go do our own thing. I mean, my younger brother's 5.5
Yeah.
years younger than me, and then there's me, and then obviously my parents and my aunt are older. So what I want to do during the day is
Mm-hmm.
very different than what my 20-year-old brother wants to do during the day, or what my 50s, parents and
Right.
aunt want to go do during the day. So you go do all those cool things, and
Yeah.
then you get back together, and like you said, you can like talk about what you did. Like, oh, what did you do today? Oh, I did this and this and this. I didn't even see that. That's so much fun. I went and did this. Versus like if you have spent
Yeah.
every second of every day together for 5 days, like I would run out of things to talk about. Even with like my closest friends,
Right.
like people I really enjoy spending time with, I'm out of topics at this point. Like we have exhausted our communication efforts.
Right. That's how people get in fights.
That's why people fight is because they have spent 6 days with each other, they haven't interacted with any other humans, and they've done the same thing. And so when you're out of conversation topics, I guess we're fighting now.
Right. It's just like, oh, I can't take it. I can't take it anymore. Like,
Yeah.
come on. Ugh. Okay. Okay. Let me make sure I get. Okay. So, family reunions. So, I guess that's it. Family reunions. If you want to go in, if you still want to act like that, at least don't wear the matching shirts.
Yeah. Don't make it
Because
obvious that
people
you're a
are
family reunion. Just like wear your shirts and no one will know that you're all together. That's the rule.
exactly.
That's the rule.
Yeah. Because as soon as people see the matching shirts, they're going to be like, oh, good. Here they come.
Yep, exactly.
Here come the Dudleys.
Ah.
So while you were, well, I guess this could be on this one or anyone. I could ask you the best thing that you ever saw on it, but we all know how people work. We want to hear the worst, the craziest, the worst thing you've ever seen on any of your cruise.
Yeah, that's a much better story. I'm
Isn't it?
actually the one that immediately comes to mind is actually in port, which I think is really those are the ones that really get me because I'm like, y'all, like I understand, like you're really excited to be in Puerto Rico or in Mexico or in Aruba or like all of these places. Like I'm also very excited to be here. Like
Mm-hmm.
most of the people here are just like going to work and like doing their jobs and then clocking out and going
Yeah.
home to their kids. Like this is just their day to day. And
Yeah.
I remember so vividly, I was at this little like touristy kind of shop in Aruba, you know, like inevitably most places when you get off the ship, there's like a little like shopping center or something right there, so that people who like I collect magnets from everywhere I go. Like there's always some kind of like a couple touristy shops for you to go and get your magnets and your t-shirts and your blah blah blah, you know, your random tchotchke that you want to bring home. That like probably
Yeah.
wasn't produced where you are, but that's neither here nor there. But I like go in this little shop, and it's like most of these shops are like locally owned. It's a local, you know, family or couple or whatever that owns it. And I'm like minding my business, like looking at stuff, figuring out what I want to hear. And there's like a very loud commotion in the front of the store. And I'm like,
Oh no.
I'm immediately like, because it was also one of those places where we're like the only ship that's in this port. So I'm like, it's one of our people. Like, damn it. And because you're always hoping that it's like someone from the other cruise line, right? It's like, well, those people are like that, but we're just fine. Like, that's always kind of the hope you got in the back of your head.
Exactly.
And so there's like this commotion. So of course, everyone in the store that's like probably the size of like maybe a little bigger than the average American like bedroom, like probably about the size of a studio apartment. Like these places are relatively small. So like if there's a commotion, everyone hears what's going on. So collectively the entire store like turns and is like, what's going on? And this like woman, I guess, was like angry about the price of something. And the like guy who owned the store was basically like, these are my prices. Like, I'm not going to haggle with you. So she like very angrily like storms out of the store. And everybody was like, okay, lady, whatever. That was weird. Everyone goes back to doing what they're doing. This woman comes back into this store and starts yelling at like the people, like shoppers, not like the owner, like the shoppers of like, don't shop here. These people are crooks. They're terrible. And so the like owner of the store, who's like also checking people out, like it's very clearly like family owned and operated, is like, if you don't leave my shop, like I'm calling the cops, which like I think is a very fair reaction to this woman being crazy in your store. And she, of course, goes like, you're not going to call the cops on me, blah, 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 blah. So he, like, picks up the phone next to him behind the thing, because there's always, like, an extra police presence at these ports, because they want to make sure that, like, the only people going back to the ships are, like, the people that are supposed to be going back on the ships. And, like, they check IDs and all of this kind of stuff, which, like, is a good feeling as someone who's about to get back on the ship, that the people that are on it are, like, the people that are supposed to be. And so he like picks up the phone, and I guess she like then realizes that like he was in fact very serious about like calling the cops, because she very easily, like very quickly makes her way out of the store. And so everyone was like, the entire like line of like four of us, like immediately are like, we're like, we are so sorry. Like, I can't believe she acted this way. Like, you know, super apologetic. And he was basically, he like straight up told us, he was like, it wouldn't be the first time that I've had to call the cop, like on a tourist. And I was like, this is, I like don't understand how someone decides to act this way when that guy's like just trying to like put food on the table and like pay his bills.
Right.
And I think that's the thing that like a bunch of people forget. And this is like one of the kind of things like I think I'll touch on again in a minute. Like ultimately, like these people are just like, I understand that you're in paradise, but this is where these people live. And that's what it all boils down to. Like, don't be a jerk to the people who live on the island that you're on for like 6 hours this one time.
Right. And I think
they have dibs there.
Right. Well, and I think that's like, and we see this a lot with like the headlines of how people act and stuff. And I think it is because it's kind of, the cruise ships will stop at kind of some of these island destinations or these destinations that are a little bit poorer and stuff. And so it's like, whatever the rules are, whatever is, it's like, oh, those aren't real.
Yeah.
Like I'm, you know, like, oh, you can suggest that, but it's not real. And it's like, and so then their minds are blown when like the cops are called. And it's like, well, if you would have done that at home and acted that same way, they would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's like why don't you think that applies to you?
Like there was a huge story a couple months ago now about how a guy brought, I think it was maybe just ammunition, but maybe also firearms into Turks and Caicos. And they had passed a law that said like, if you are coming here for tourism, you cannot bring weapons, because they were having like a situation where they were having animal populations become endangered because folks were coming into Turks and Caicos and like hunting them for sport. And so they said this to try to like calm down all of that tourism. And this guy came in and brought them and like got arrested at the port and was like, I should have been warned by like
Yeah.
the cruise line or whatever. And I'm like, first of all, what? Just like what in general?
Right.
But secondly, like it's your job to become informed about the certain rules and
Yeah.
regulations of an area. Like if I am traveling to even like a different state and I'm aware that there's a law change
Mm-hmm.
there, like I can't look at a cop and go, "Well, I'm from Alabama. I'm not from here." So like
Right.
the Alabama law applies to me. The Georgia law doesn't. It's like that's
Exactly.
not how that works. And it's people are aware of that in the States, but then they like leave the country and they're suddenly like, no rules apply to me. I'm just a tourist. And it's like, no, they will in
Right.
fact arrest you and take you to jail if they deem it necessary. That's the entire point of
Exactly.
them having like a government and police officers.
Right. Yeah, it's like, and because I saw some of those headlines too, and yeah, and it's like, oh, well, I forgot or I didn't know it was in there. And it was like, well, who cares? I could say the same thing with, weed in my luggage
Yeah.
going from one state to another here, and people
Yeah.
won't care.
Yeah. If
Like,
I go through TSA and they pull my bag, the very first question they ask is, did you pack your luggage or did someone else pack your luggage for you? And if
mm-hmm.
you were the one who packed your luggage, even if someone snuck something in there later, if you tell them, yes, I packed my luggage, then if they find something in there that shouldn't be, it's on you. Like if you, and it's the same
Yeah.
kind of situation where like if you come in and you say, yes, I packed my luggage, or yes, I like brought my passport to be here, whatever it may be, you are willingly entering these places. And so their laws still
Right.
apply. Like if there's a law that I'm not aware of,
Exactly.
like if I, the guy was like, oh, I didn't know this was like a law here or whatever. It's like, if I go in, like I said, like if I were to go from Alabama to Georgia and there's a law there that I break, cops don't care if I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that it was a law. The law is the law. There isn't like a thing you have to sign when
Right.
you go a new place that's like, I have read and agreed to abide by the rules of XYZ place. It's like, no, personal responsibility means that if you think there's even a chance that you may break a law there, you like need to
Right.
do research. Google is free.
Right. And yeah, and like just kind of in general, like flying with ammunition, like having it in your luggage, like if that's something that you do on a regular basis, just give that luggage a little once over before
Yeah,
before you
if
go.
you
Cuz
know
it's like
that the
that's
last
always going to be a bit of a red flag.
Yeah, if you are aware that the last time that you used that suitcase was you going on a hunting trip, then like maybe do a second pass before you start packing things.
Right.
Maybe that just seems like a common sense thing to me. Like if I have been on a hunting trip and then I'm going abroad, I'm gonna go, well, let me make sure that there's nothing that like fell out of a box that's still in here or got tucked into the side. Like
Right.
do a second pass. Maybe just like as a general
Exactly.
life rule. If you go somewhere and do something, do a second pass of the suitcase before you pack it again. Don't assume that it's okay.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. So that kind of throws us right into, let me make sure that we've hit everything. Okay, on my questions. So that does take us into, we've already given a lot of tips for tourists to be a better tourist. Again, tourists, we're not out here trying to tell you where the deals are. We're trying to tell you how to be a better human when you're on vacation. So are there anything that you want to throw out, a couple you want to reiterate? Just how can somebody be, and also because our topic is working remotely while on vacation. So if you have any tips for that, anything,
Yeah.
what are you thinking?
So first of all, if you're going to work remotely especially if you are going into a different country, don't do that in
Mm.
secret. Tell your boss, tell your manager, tell HR that you are going into a different country,
Oh.
especially if you work in a field where some of the things that you do are sensitive information. I work in a job
Ooh.
in which I work with very secure data. So there were certain steps that I had to take before I left to ensure that I wouldn't be breaking the law. Don't just assume
Mm.
like, oh, well, I'm going to be on vacation, but like I'll have a good internet connection and I'll have my work laptop and everything will be fine. Don't do this in secret. Like I think there is an assumption that like if I'm working remotely and I'm not at home, like I need to keep that a secret. 90% of
Mm,
workplaces, if you're working remotely and you're doing your job, they don't actually care where you are. It does not
right.
matter. It's like if I go spend a week with like my cousin, work doesn't care that I'm there versus at home.
Right.
But you need to communicate that if you're going, especially to a different country, because there may be laws that you don't want to break. Or you may get there and suddenly you can't access anything because your
Yeah.
computer recognizes you're not in America, actually, so you can't access this thing. So, like, don't do it in secret. Communicate with people.
There.
The last thing you want is to say that you're going to be, in Greece for 2 weeks or Aruba or wherever, and then get there and
Mm-hmm.
realize, oh no, I can't do my job. It's like, be willing to
Right.
communicate. Most workplaces are going to be very cool about it, especially if you feel like you're doing something where, like, you think it's possible. Your job's probably going to be just fine with it. Like, communicate with it, because
Right.
they're like, that's something that would have completely like canceled this for me if I hadn't been aware that that was the thing I had to do and hadn't communicated that from the start. It's like, communicate. um
Gotcha.
Acknowledge that the places that you're going and the people that you are seeing are real humans with real
I
lives
love it.
and real jobs, and like, aren't when you leave a country or you leave the ship at the end of the week or whatever it may be, those people don't disappear. Like, those are still real humans who, like, you leave a ship at 9 a.m. on a Sunday. By 11 a.m. on Sunday, the ship is busy again with new people. Those people
Yeah.
don't get a break. They're very long days. So, like, acknowledge the fact that, like, they are real humans, and on that note, that they are allowed to have days where they're a little off. Like, if
Mm.
I am dealing with tourists every single day for 9 months straight, you're gonna catch me on a bad day. Like, I'm gonna have a
Oh
day where
yeah.
I'm like not having a super great time. And I acknowledge that people are on vacation, but like, those folks are doing their best if they're having a bad day to make sure that no one else is aware that they're having a bad day. So, like, give them a
Yeah.
little leeway if, like, a crew member is a little short with you, or you don't feel like you're getting the acknowledgement that, like, you deserve because you're on vacation or whatever. Like, those people are allowed to have off days. Let them have their off days.
Oh,
Um,
that's great advice.
and I think that's true for crew and for the other people on the ship. Like, there are going to be
Mm.
other people that are also on vacation at the same time as you, whether you're on a cruise or you're traveling to a foreign country or you're just like going on a road trip to a different state. Like, you are not going to be the only
Mm.
person that is on vacation, and other people are allowed to do things before you, and other people are also allowed to enjoy
Ah.
their vacation. And so, if you were going on vacation to one of these places, I understand that for some vacations it's a once in a lifetime thing. Like, there are people
Mm-hmm.
that may have to save up for years or a lifetime to go abroad or go on a cruise or do one of these trips. And you absolutely deserve to have an amazing time. And I hope you have the time of your life. But you also need to acknowledge that, just like if you were to, like, go eat out at a restaurant in town, you may not have the perfect experience every single time. But don't let that be
Mm.
like the tone setter for your vacation. I feel like a lot of the times I hear, like, I really loved this trip. I had an amazing time. But, like, this one night at dinner, like, the food took a little long. And it's like, you're saying that you had a
Right.
great time for 95% of this vacation, but the thing you're bringing back home with it is the fact that at one point at dinner, your, like, entree took 10 minutes when you wanted it to take 5. Like, maybe it's just my mindset, but I'm always like, at the end of the day, waiting 10 minutes on a cruise ship is better than waiting 10 minutes at home. Like, that's just,
Well,
at the
exactly.
end of the day, you are on the
Yeah.
vacation of a lifetime. And even if something doesn't go your way, being on
Right.
vacation is always better than sitting at home. Like, I have never been on vacation and been like, I'm so miserable that I wish I was at my house. Like, I've
Right.
not an experience I've had before. And so, don't let,
Yeah.
like, a small thing beat you down about your
Well,
vacation.
yeah, because I think that's it too, is it's not somebody else's job to make sure that you enjoy yourself on vacation. And I think you've touched on that a lot. It is a mindset. So if you just go out and you're like already like tense and mad and you're just like, now make this the best vacation, it's like, well, it's never going to be the best vacation because like it starts inside.
Yeah.
And so you should be able to hit a hiccup and then just keep going.
Yeah,
It
okay.
shouldn't define it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, like, on cruises, there's always like a deck party to like celebrate like sail away. And while I was there, I had
Mm.
like a good friend of mine who was cruise director for the majority of the time that I was on board. And one of the things that he
Mm-hmm.
always would say, like, as part of that sail away party, because most of the ship is always there, is he always would say, like, about the time the ship left, and like, in this moment, we are choosing to have a good week. And I think something as simple as like,
Yeah.
I'm really frustrated, but I'm choosing this week that we're going to have a good week and we're going to have a good time is like half the battle. Because, like you said, if you've already like, you woke up like later than you wanted to, or something took a little bit longer, if you're already in a bad mood, there is
Mm-hmm.
quite literally nothing I can do to force you to not be in a bad mood. Like, if you're in a bad mood, you're in a bad mood. And that's fine. But that
Right.
doesn't mean that you get to make everyone else miserable. Like, everyone else is also on
Exactly.
vacation. Let them have a good time. You don't be a Debbie Downer. Like, if you want to be mad,
No.
be mad alone is the key of this. If
Yeah,
you want
go
to be mad, do it
sulk
by
off
yourself.
to the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go back to the cabin, take a nap. We'll see you in a couple hours.
Exactly. Yeah. Figure out a way to fix yourself.
Exactly. But I think that, like, the thing that I want to go back to is like, if you hear the idea of someone working remotely on a vacation or going to a different country or whatever it may be, and you're like, that sounds really, really cool. Like, just do
Mm-hmm.
it. Like, I have gotten into this mindset since the pandemic that we were all forced to be at home for months.
Mm-hmm.
And quite literally, there was nothing we could do about it. Like, I was part of the class that graduated college during the pandemic. I did not get to do all of these final senior things. There's so much that I missed out on that I would have loved to do, but I couldn't because of the pandemic. So now that we can, like, just go. Like, if you have the ability to make this happen and your job is happy with it, your job is willing to let it all get lined up, and you can do this, you are only, like, we are all on Earth for X amount of time. And that time can fluctuate and it can change. And we can all, like, my X time could be over tomorrow. And if one of the things that I want to make sure I do is that I go and see the world and I go do this, don't let something as like menial and silly as, well, I have a work from home job, so I have to be home, be the thing that stops you from doing cool things. Because that's ultimately, no one, my mindset has become that no one after they retire, as they look back on their life, go, I'm so glad that I stayed at work the whole time. It is I'm so glad I took that trip. I'm so glad that I went to these places. I'm so glad I did this thing that I wanted to do. And so if you want to do it, like, if you have the means to do it, don't let something as simple as like, well, I need to be at work. Like, that's a lame excuse. Come up with something better.
Right. That is a great piece of advice to go out on. And I really think, are you Gen Z? Do you consider?
Yeah, I'm like one of those like cusp people that like,
you're a cusp
I like
one.
remember when I got my first cell phone, but also like don't necessarily remember like not having a computer in my house. I'm like the weird third thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm like that between millennials and Gen X. But yeah, and I do feel like, and so with my students, they're Gen Z and stuff, and that's where I feel a lot where it is kind of shifting of this mindset like that, because again, I mean, y'all grew up when not, I'm not going to say your freedom, but like the mobility mobility was kind of taken away from you for a couple of years. And where it's just
it's not
kind
even
of
just the travel side of it, but there was a time there that was like, if I want to go see like my family or some friends, it was okay, well, 6 weeks before we decide we want to hang out, like everybody has to start quarantining and not going and seeing people, and we have to keep our bubble really small, and like make sure you test multiple times before you go see people. And so now that that's all gone and I don't have that restriction, I'm like, quite literally, what is stopping me? Like, I have a car, I can put gas in it. Like, let's just go.
Yeah. And that's and it's kind of this idea of like kind of just rethinking. And I like what you're saying about that. And I think, you know, I feel like I wish some of my students would listen to that a little bit more, of just things don't have to happen because it's the way that it's always been.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, we had this work structure of a 9 to 5 in an office, whatever, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so, yeah, make what you will of it.
I mean, so many
and then
workplaces,
it doesn't put so much pressure.
Right, exactly. Because so many workplaces didn't go back in person after the pandemic. For
Mhm.
whatever reason, they realized that most folks, I mean, obviously there are some exceptions. Like if you're getting a nursing degree, like you're going to have to be in person. Like there's no real remote stuff
Right.
that you can do for that there. If you're a doctor, there's like you're limited in the amount of things you can do. But for most folks,
Right.
most of the workplaces have stayed remote because they realize that the cost of having an office versus like the productivity just doesn't match. And so there isn't that, well, I have to be at work on Monday morning in person in an office and I'm going to be there from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday mentality anymore. It's like I said, if you have a job that you can make it happen with and are going somewhere that has a stable internet connection, there truly isn't another excuse out there. I mean, if it is within your means, like just get up and go. There's nothing. The only thing stopping you is like the mental blockage of like, well, I'm at work, so I need to be at work. Like, I got my job done. I did what I needed to do. I collected my paycheck, and then I also got to do all this really cool stuff on the side.
Right. With the caveat of do all of that with all of your other great tips, though, throughout this episode of don't just be a jerk throughout the world. Now
Also
that
be a
you've
good
got some time, always be a good person and actually learn, actually become a global citizen through it, which sounds great, which is what sounds like exactly what you're doing. Fantastic. Thank you again, Emily, so much for joining us today, for telling us a little bit, opening our eyes to what it's like to kind of just live and hang out on a cruise ship and work remotely while you're doing it. For the listeners, for deep dives into all things tourism, be sure to subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcasts. And remember, you can call yourself whatever you want, but at the end of the day, you're a tourist and it's okay. The first step to getting better is admitting it. All right.